All right. Welcome back to another episode of TezTalks Radio. Joining us as our new co-host for this series going forward, alongside myself, is Marissa Trew of TZ APAC. How's it going,
Yeah,
Marissa?
hi. No, it's really great to be here. Thanks for asking me to join the team. I'm quite excited.
Yeah, definitely. So there's obviously been a lot of stuff going on lately within Tezos. So would you like to spend a couple of minutes talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big news of the week is the Florence upgrade. The sixth protocol upgrade. I think, I mean, I'm sure everyone within the ecosystem is generally well versed and kind of keeping up to date. But for those who are perhaps new or just learning about Tezos, the new upgrade basically involves, twice the maximum operation size of a smart contract, gas optimization, so lower fees, intuitive smart contract development, and like a more reliable amendment process. And what else do you think was going on that you think we should mention?
I think one important thing to really talk about is kind of this growth we've been seeing with Hicket Nunk, and
Yeah.
for some of those who may not be aware, I think the most pivotal part where we started to see this growth really came from Edo, and that's been really instrumental in kind of paving the way for further utility, both in terms of opening up DeFi, NFTs, and more within Tezos. And that's kind of actuated when we look at the activation date of Edo, which was back when in February, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also look at the contract call data from Better Call Dev, and following that point in time, it's pretty much just eclipsed since then. And I think that's been really good, and their trajectory is clearly getting higher. And what we saw recently with Florence, um, that activation kind of optimizes some of the things we saw come from Edo further, and I think it's going to continue to keep this trend going.
Yeah, I think it's sort of setting a really firm baseline for people understanding the true value of the Tezos blockchain and really realizing its potential. And it's shining a really good spotlight on it at the minute. So it's almost like it's time to shine.
Right.
The other story I kind of wanted to touch on just out here in APAC that I think is worthy of note, not necessarily as linked to Tezos specifically, but obviously I think just the growing appetite for blockchain is something that will indirectly benefit it, is in the last couple of weeks, there was an announcement that a leading Singapore bank called DBS and Temasek Holdings, which is one of Singapore's sovereign wealth funds and it's one of the top 10 largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, as well as JP Morgan, who obviously needs no introduction. They've actually announced plans to set up a new blockchain-based cross-border payment system called Partior. I really hope I'm saying that right. Where, I mean, the quote that they used was to have an efficient digital solution to enable next generation programmable value transfer for banks and their clients in real time, which I mean is a very fancy and technical way of saying they're trying to enable instantaneous transactions as opposed to, the inefficient traditional framework that requires multiple validations by banks that obviously slows down money transfers worldwide. And, it's currently in development. I think they're actively engaging leading banks to take part so that they can scale it quite quickly. But while all that's impressive, I think what actually really makes this story noteworthy is the sorts of institutional players that are involved. It's both financial and governmental. And so it sort of shows that there's this openness, not to simply kind of accepting the growth of blockchain technology, but more how they're actually contributing to building up the ecosystem further by developing their own products. And this move it's building on past work that's actually been led by the same three institutions, as well as the Singapore's government, in terms of the development of Singapore's own central bank digital currency through a project called Project Ubin, which was led by the Monetary Authority of Singapore all the way back in 2016. And I think we actually had our head of TZ APAC David Shin talk about it on a podcast with BSN International about how Asia is sort of at the forefront of CBDCs. But basically, what's so interesting about all of this is the fact that Singapore's leading financial institutions are calling blockchain a game changer. They're saying it's like a watershed moment for banking. We have like DBS actually launched a digital exchange so people could participate in secure token offerings. They could trade, for digital currencies. They actually are offering digital custody services, and they're expanding that offering. And so I think it all just goes to show that, I said it before, Singapore is one of the most blockchain-friendly business environments, and this is sort of feeding into how it's positioning itself as a global financial hub. And the fact that they are seeing blockchain as a truly fundamental part of that, it's amazing. And it kind of, I think it sort of defeats the argument that, will blockchain be a passing thing, or will it be a trend? And it's actually, setting its infrastructure roots very firmly down. And I think that's awesome. I thought that was just a cool story to share.
Yeah, definitely. Not to downplay that, but I guess within Asia, have you noticed any sort of trends like older people or people trading crypto on their phones at this point?
Yeah, I think because there are so many mobile applications that enable that, it has become a lot more seamless, and a lot like the barrier to entry is a lot lower than, say, if you were to choose traditional investing. I don't think it even just relates to older participants. I personally found it much easier to trade cryptocurrencies than I did stocks in a stock market. And I can do it off my phone. Like I could do it right now if I wanted to.
Right.
So I think it's just kind of enabled this much broader level of retail participation that, the traditional stock market never really enabled.
Yeah, definitely. It's open access, it's without borders, and peer-to-peer.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great primer, but I think we should probably start to introduce our guests who are sat on screen with us. So today, we're interviewing KoineArth. We're interviewing Prapul Chandra, who's the founder, as well as Deep Chenna, who's the blockchain solution architect. And we're going to learn all about their latest product development, which is Markets End. So welcome to you both.
Thank you. Pleasure
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Welcome.
So I think, maybe to kick off, we should just get to know you a little bit better. So before we dig into your tech and what you're building, why don't we get a little story into how each of you got into blockchain? Where did your blockchain journeys begin?
Sure. So let me go first, and then I'll hand it over to Deep. So I discovered Bitcoin back in 2014, and I just found the way the Bitcoin paper solved the problem of digital cash to be extremely interesting, and I've been kind of following it up, thinking about it. But it was around about in 2016 when smart contracts started to be discussed in the crypto community that I really got excited, right? And it was late 2016 where I remember I was at home and I kind of said, okay, it's time to jump. I had been in the tech industry for about 17, 18 years. And in late 2016, I made up my mind that this is going to be a world-changing technology, and this was an opportunity that was ready to be jumped on. So I said, we're going to start a company, and it took me a little while. I was at Hewlett-Packard at that time, Hewlett-Packard Labs. So I decided that we're going to do this in 2016 late. And 2017 is when a few of us got together and started playing with this technology, right? Early 2017. And then we officially incorporated the company a year later in 2018. And as Marissa was saying about the friendliness of Singapore to be a blockchain hub, we incorporated the headquarters in Singapore. Right? And 2018 is when the company officially incorporated. And then Deep joined us a few months later, and I'll let him talk about his journey. Deep, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Praful. So my blockchain journey started, I think it's linked to Praful actually. I attended one of the talk that Praful gave, Fundamentals of Blockchain, way back in 2017. That's where I got into, I know Bitcoin, but I never went in details of what is this technology. But after his talk, that's when I went in, got the details. There are two main reasons that drive me towards blockchain. Like before here, I was working on totally different technology. I was with Intel, I was with factory automation solutions and all that. So the two main reasons. Personally, the philosophy behind blockchain is something that I believe, it excites me. And the second, I believe this is another technological trend that you know we are in the new technological crossroads of the another technological innovation after the internet. So I thought, okay, it is my time where it should be part of something big and something future. We are anyway not part of, when decades ago there was internet, and before that there's a Silicon Valley, and now it's blockchain. And it's a great opportunity to be part of something big and something future, and we can share our stories after a couple of decades, saying that okay, we are at that instance where we have contributed and we played our part, building this new decentralized world. Yeah, that's my story with blockchain. Yeah.
Yeah, those are some very interesting stories. Maybe, and we touched on what it's like earlier in Asia. Maybe you all can kind of share a bit with us about how are things within the blockchain ecosystem, like within India. What's the general mood or sense people have towards it today?
Well, so if you talk about it right now, right, as of today, there's quite a bit of confusion going on here, and I'll tell you what's happening. About a few months ago, the Central Bank of India came out with a potential position paper, which was strongly against all crypto, right? The finance minister in India then kind of backtracked a little bit, saying that we will have a much more measured approach towards crypto. Now, in both these statements, one thing that came out interesting was that both the Federal Bank and the finance minister kind of try to separate blockchain from the crypto world. And they said blockchain is definitely a technology for the future, but we are against crypto as an asset or a currency. Right? Now, there was a lot of pushback from the crypto community in India saying, well, if you really want to use public blockchains, there is no way you can get around at least some regulation around crypto, or at least some blessing of crypto. And since then, things quieted down, and then this COVID situation hit, and that conversation has really gone on the back burner because of what has been happening in the industry as we speak. Another big thing happened last week, where a few of the large banks, which were the banking partners of the decentralized exchanges providing crypto services in India, stopped taking payments. And that has disrupted, again, quite a few crypto transactions going through. So if you ask me as a snapshot in time today, as we are doing this podcast, there is definitely a lot of uncertainty and anxiousness in the crypto world, whereas the government believes that the blockchain is definitely a technology of the future that they want to leverage in the long term, both private industry and public regulatory bodies. But if you take a slightly longer view, right, if you take a slightly longer view and take a step back and say what's been happening in the last couple of years, I think that paints a slightly more positive picture, in the sense that once you look at the rulings that have come from the Supreme Court, if you look at the statements that have come from the finance ministry, I think we are going through a journey as a country, primarily of learning and disseminating information about this technology and its impacts in the economy. And the acceptance that, as Deep said, this is the technology of the future, is growing slowly but surely. And I believe that in the long term, what's going to happen, or at least I hope what's going to happen, is that we'll have a nuanced approach towards crypto and blockchain both, and it's going to be positive. But it's a matter of time before that we get there.
So then what would you say are the key areas of growth and opportunity in India specifically that sort of make it unique as a market?
Well, so one is, of course, India is a huge, huge country, right? 1.4 billion people. And one of the things about the economy of the country is it's a very, very deep economy, right? It is not a superficial economy. It is a very deep economy with a lot of industries serving the local markets, right? If you look back at the history of India, at least the economic history of India, most of the growth that India has gone through has not been export-led, which means the country's private sector and the public sector have been serving the local economy, right? So the opportunity to transform the economic ecosystem in India for any technology which changes finance and economics is definitely huge, right? So that's the big picture view that, if the economy is huge, the blockchain will have a huge impact, right? But if you kind of break it down and say, okay, where are the sectors this is going to kind of hit, right? You have the first sector. This is like a traditional technology adoption curve, right? You start with the innovators. And who are the innovators? In any country you go, the innovators are the crypto geeks. These are the people who first invested in crypto, believing in the vision of where this is going. I think we are past that stage. Then you move on to the innovator sections, right? The innovator sections are where we would place companies like ourselves who are building solutions which can be used by enterprises and organizations without really caring that it is built on blockchain. So the way we kind of think about us is, yes, we use blockchain, but when we talk to customers, it has to be about the value proposition that our solution brings to them. The fact that it uses blockchain is incidental. Today, going and say my technology uses internet is an oxymoron. Of course, your technology uses internet, right? So we want blockchain to be at that stage that, yes, it uses blockchain, but so what? What is the value proposition for the end customer, right? So I believe that that is the place where the innovators are coming in. The early adopters are being driven with solutions which kind of hide blockchain 2 or 3 layers down and talk to enterprises about the benefits that they are actually going to get from this technology. I believe the next phase in this is going to be a combination of two sectors. One, fintech. Fintech, as you know, is a huge industry in India, right? But the adoption of blockchain in fintech is still small. We are one of the few companies who are focused on it. Specifically, we are looking at supply chain finance and deep tier finance. But I think that's the sector that's going to grow. And the next sector that's going to grow is got to do with the other use of blockchain with traceability. And that is where we believe it's going to go into environmental sustainability compliance regulations. It's going to drive support for that and for supply chain operations in general. But that's my view of how it's going to happen in India.
Yeah, I think now would be a good time to go ahead and move towards KoineArth. I believe on your website it says that you describe yourself as a startup working at the intersection of blockchains, machine learning, and mechanism design. Could you share with us what the mission of KoineArth is and maybe some of the problems that you're aiming to solve?
Sure. So let me start with a little bit of where the spark was born, right? So the idea, the seed of the idea was born in 2016, right? This was at a time where I was pursuing my PhD thesis at the Indian Institute of Science. And my work was in the area of incentivizing private contributions for public goods, right? So it was at the intersection of economics and computer science. And that's when the bulb really went off, right? That's when the journey started for me way back in 2016. And the key idea that kind of triggered this whole thing was that, can we think about the contracts that we have in social life, right? Or as we call social contracts between the citizen and the state. The term comes from Rousseau in France in the late 18th century, right? The social contract. And the initial idea was, why can't smart contracts be used to formalize and enforce social contracts? Right? That's where I really started thinking about this. And eventually I came to the realization that what this technology will do is it will become the infrastructure, it will become the digital infrastructure for economics. It will become the digital infrastructure where economic networks are built, where marketplace, and where even economies are built. And I think that's been happening implicitly if you reflect upon what is happening in crypto industry. Um, of course, the ICOs were marketplaces for coins. That's where Tezos came about. It was one of the largest ICOs way back in 2017. But it was a market for coins. Then you kind of think about, okay, what's happening today? Well, you're seeing marketplaces for NFTs come out. And both of these are digital assets, right? But then you take one step further and say, what really is a digital asset? Why can't real world assets be mapped to digital assets? And the answer is they absolutely can be, right? And that's where we are kind of seeing now what we are focusing on KoineArth is, in one line, if I was to explain it, is the ability for organizations to create economic networks or marketplaces using blockchains as the enabling technology. Right? So that's fundamentally what we do. Now, where does mechanism design and machine learning come in? Well, mechanism design is a field of game theory, right? And what mechanism design does is it basically designs incentives to achieve certain objectives at the social optimization or social utilitarianism. So that's what mechanism design does. It comes in various frames. From the time we design smart contracts and which we kind of make available for our customers on blockchain, we always wear the hat of, are the incentives of all the parties being met if this smart contract is enforced? That is one place, right? Whether it's designing auctions, whether it's designing incentive mechanism in terms of financial incentives, that's the hat that we wear for mechanism design. And then finally, machine learning. This is where I think this is some more innovation that we haven't yet revealed or shared widely, but perhaps we'll talk about it in the next day's talk. But what we have started doing is we are saying that not only can humans be awarded identities on a blockchain platform with a private key, public key there, but AI bots can be given identities with these private key, public key bots. And right now we have a couple of bots on our platform who are actually have a private key, public key identity and who can take actions on the platform by digitally signing those transactions. We call these market bots, but that's where we believe the intelligence of external AI and bots will start to come onto the blockchain platform.
I think it's really cool that a lot of it's designed with political, philosophical underpinnings, and in terms of enabling a social contract, where I think it's something where it maybe lays dormant in the back of a lot of our minds, but it's not actually consciously embedded into design. So I think that's actually a very intelligent approach. But I want to take this opportunity to pivot this conversation over to Deep, who's the blockchain solutions architect, to tell us more about markets and your latest product development. So I'd love to know about what went into the design of the product passport, the invoicing solution, the supply chain and inventory management, and also particularly why NFTs were made like a fundamental part of each one's design. Can you share more on that, please?
Yes, Marissa. So, like Praful mentioned, right, a lot of this blockchain complexity was hidden multiple layers under hood of the markets. And when you see a markets and as a product, it is a supply chain or a B2B solution that could enable multiple use cases. At the heart of the market chain is a notion of group, right, or a business network. The fact that you can come on board with few clicks, you can spin up a group. Under the hood, it is a permission blockchain that's gonna spin up, and you can invite your partners, vendors, or distribution network, okay, with a simple user experience, and create a business network which is a permission blockchain, and you can start to transact with each other. Okay, and we have pre-built for different workflows which are configurable based on different needs, and each group could have a different objective, right? It's not that marketing is particularly built for solving one specific problem. As long as there's group of people have a common objective to solve some kind of a problem, it could be operational efficiency, or it could be improve access to capital in real time financing, or auditable track and trace, right? It has a variety of use cases that we can build. So marketchain has has that framework built already. Now it's up to us and the customers use cases to enable variety of use cases on top of that. So during this businesses, when the business interact with each other, so these, so especially in the supply chain network, or they're also called as value chains, they end up creating values, right? The value, it could be these transactions are in that the invoice that was raised on a specific party is that promise of payment in the future, is underlying asset that some party is holding it, right? These, if you map to the real world NFTs, just that these NFTs didn't born before, these assets are already there and people are using traditional systems, and it could be regular ERPs could be generating these invoices, and these invoices exist in multiple systems today. Example, from supplier ERP to a buyer ERP, and if it goes for financing, this could be sitting in some loan management system on the financial side. The same invoice as an asset have a different versions sitting in a different multiple systems, right? So if you have to really address that, the real fit for invoices, if you ask me, is NFT. It's an NFT. There's a specific party who owns this asset, right? If if this particular invoice get paid, there's a party who gets a payment. And why can't you just trade this invoice outside in the market, right? You just sell it outside for in a specific decentralized finance marketplace, and then you get paid, and somebody who buys that particular NFT get paid when the real party does that. So if you turn back and see, all these business documents or not other way qualifies to be NFT. Just that people are not yet get used to the NFT space in the enterprise domain. So it's not directly you can actually put on the face saying that, okay, this is your NFT, right? So what markets, and in fact smartly we have enabled, is people still interact in a traditional way. They create e-invoicing, like any kind of e-invoicing, or a supply chain finance solution, right? And under the hood, what we call as a live copy, which we develop, is connects them to the future, right? Now you create an invoice on permission blockchain, right? So we have a connector, right, that connects to Tezos today, right, which and under the hood can simply, with a toggle, create an NFT for that invoice, right? So now the same invoice could be sitting on a decentralized public blockchain, and tomorrow we can connect this particular thing with any of the DeFi solutions, and the same invoice could be traded, right? So we have this pipeline and whole framework fit in, where this current business, how they operate, slowly we are transforming them to the future of how this business is going to operate after these things mature and they realize. So that's where our product has built with. So now supply chain is one of the domain we primarily focused initially, and we are there are a lot of use cases within the supply chain itself. It's not just one thing. So like I mentioned, operational efficiency is one thing where you might want deep tier inventory visibility, right? So ERPs don't offer that. So it has built with packed with a lot of features that currently what ERPs and any other traditional systems are not solving. It is not that it replaces any system, but it is adds additional to the what other systems are not yet solved, and only with this blockchain and with this kind of a framework could be addressed. So that's the heart of the markets and the design philosophy. So these are the three things that you name. Passport is where we enable auditable track and trace, where multiple parties come together and put their signature on that particular product, saying that, okay, I have received this product so and so date, and I had a quality check on this product on so and so date, and this qualified, and whole track and trace is recorded in a shared ledger. And another thing is, like example, if invoices is on this distributed ledger, and you have an auditable track and trace, and the financials can easily trust such kind of assets, and simply they can easily finance such kind of an assets. So these are few things, and this marketing is a kind of more of a framework which could enable variety of business use cases when it comes to multiple parties has to coordinate and they had a shared ledger scenarios.
Yeah, I think what I really took away from that was your point that ultimately business transactions and business operations remain largely unchanged, but how efficiently they can actually be handled is what blockchain's really aiming to solve, or at least what Markets N is aiming to solve. But I kind of want to zoom in a little further on to the NFT space, because as you also briefly mentioned, NFTs are I think they're fairly hot on the scene at the minute, but a lot of the attention has been devoted more to creators, artists, making sure there are, like artists being paid royalties, making sure that digital art is properly valued, but less so on the enterprise front. So I wanted to ask whether there has been any challenge in bringing people around to the idea of the potential of NFTs in an enterprise use case versus, like an art marketplace one. That question's open to either of you, really.
Right. Let me take a shot at it first, and then I'll hand it over to Deep. The trick, Marissa, is that when you talk to enterprises, you have to use your judgment whether you are going to use the term NFT or not, right? And it really depends on who you are talking to. So this has been one of the learnings in the last 3 years when we talk to customers, that talk to them about the business value proposition. The business leaders really don't care about what technology you use, right?
Sure.
If the technology works and it brings value to the businesses, that's fine. Right now, in terms of, I'll give you examples of how conversations go without the use of the term NFT and how conversations go with the use of the term NFT. And they are very different conversations, okay? And it depends on who you're talking to. So when we talk to customers where we want to focus the conversation on the value proposition, we talked about things like a product passport, right? Now, when people hear product passports, they immediately build up a mental model in their mind as to what is happening. So right now, for example, we are working with a British car manufacturer on issuing product passports for their vehicles, right? Which can kind of be the history of the vehicle from cradle to grave, what happened with it, insurance, warranties, right, resales, and so on and so forth. Of course, behind the scene, a product passport uses the enterprise and NFT solution that we have built. Right? And as you correctly said, Marissa, right now the focus is on art as the underlying asset on which an NFT is issued. But the NFT value proposition can represent any asset, not just a piece of art, as you know. Right? And similarly, even though the primary focus of NFT today is on representing ownership of that asset, that's only a point in time. The underlying framework says you can issue statements not only about the ownership of the asset, and this is the work that we did with Tezos Foundation last year, but you can represent other things about the asset, from its authenticity to whether there's an insurance smart contract working on it, to its environmental sustainable governance footprint, to the geo origin of the product. There are many things that the NFT can be used to say that this piece of information about this asset is actually authentic. And that's what we kind of talk about when we talk to our enterprise customers about product passports, right? So that's one kind of conversation. Another kind of conversation that happens is when the discussion that we are having with our enterprise customers is being triggered by them by looking at the NFT art marketplace. And they say, what can we do with NFTs? Right? And that's a very different conversation, because they are coming with some sort of a pre-built notion of what NFT is supposed to represent, right? And then we start talking about how digital art can intersect with enterprises. That's where the conversation starts. And then it goes into other kinds of assets on their platform and which can be tokenized, and what is the advantage of tokenizing those assets, and how does the company benefit? So two very different conversations, depending on who you are talking to, shape up.
Okay.
Deep, would you like to add anything to that?
Okay, yeah, definitely. So my perspective will be more technical because I'm not a customer friend person. So like, with any digital version, right, there are a lot of challenges of any digital version, like duplication, verification of documents, tracking of ownership, right? It's not different for business document, just that they were like, trying to manage to live with them for so many years, right? So now I think with NFTs that can change, right? Who owns a digital version of invoice, right? It is sitting in one particular centralized system, and you share a PDF version through the email, and somebody else shares to somebody else, and then there's no way you can track the ownership, or whether it's an original or a duplicate. So it's a known problem, just that people get to find alternate ways to solve it, which are not efficient, if you ask me, and they're trying to manage to put some regulations around it, some conditions around it, and then manage with that. So but with NFTs, that whole game can change. The way the enterprises can look at their documents, right, their assets, would be a different gameplay if they start thinking as NFT. That's what I believe. The enterprises, I mean, sooner or later, this is gonna come in, right? These are very, when we, it's as much as digital art, right? If you're thinking about a big enterprises trading with each other, if an invoice is worth of 2 million, USD, or NR, it's a big asset. Someone else is sitting and owning it, right? So you need to have some kind of authenticity to that particular asset. It's just that not one central system sitting it, and somebody is physically signing it would not be scale longer, right? If you are thinking of cross-border transactions where EBLs or letter of credits, it's very challenging, right? So now it's very expensive solutions where you bring group of regulatories together and from different origins, and then try to solve such problems. With NFTs, those are very seamless things to be solved. I mean, we will travel. We are in the journey where we can, we realize such documents, such assets will become NFT in future. I cannot predict when, but it will happen sooner or later. All this business. Yeah, that's my viewpoint of enterprises, NFTs. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I want to add to the problem.
Yeah, awesome. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty unique approach, getting involved with enterprises and showcasing NFTs to them. But I think on Markets End, and you may have just touched on some of these challenges, Deep, but before we start to wrap up here, could you maybe share a bit more about some of the main challenges you've faced, both in terms of development and launch of Markets End?
Okay, so the biggest challenge, probably want to take that first?
No, you go ahead, then I will join in later.
So the biggest challenge is being, the way the mindset of the enterprises today is not completely changed towards decentralized, right? So this kind of certain features they ask, that kind of requirements they give, sometimes when we talk to them, they want X and Y and Z apart from this, right? May not always, in consensus with what decentralized. So we have to maintain that balance in our product at every instance, where preserve the decentralized nature of the markets and being built on permission blockchain, right? And also satisfy customer needs. And we day-to-day basis, we see a lot of application layer innovations that we need to do at application layer, along with what we call this layer 3, right, application. So there is a lot of innovation happening at layer 1 and layer 2, where core protocols are on top of that, side chains on extra, etc., other protocols. But there's a lot of innovation has to happen at application level, right, to make it more user friendly. People are not yet get used to storing their private keys. If you go ask an enterprise customer, right, that you have to store a 64 digit private key, and they will definitely not buy that easily, right? Where do they store? If I lose that, how should I manage, right? And who owns that? It's just an enterprise. There's in particular people coming in and going out, right? So we have to hide a lot of this complexity under the hood, and the customer sees that they interact with like any traditional system. But at the same time, we have to preserve the decentralized notion of the product. So there's a lot of technical innovation that went in to kind of enable this kind of ecosystem within markets. And when the customers comes and use the system, they don't feel this, but there's a private public key a Tezos account created for each organization. The fact that there's an NFT created for them and there's an account created for the organization was hidden, multiple layers on the hood, and then the value propositions are preserved, but not the complexity is hidden. So this is the main challenge during the course of last 2 years where we went through in markets, and right. So where at every instance we need to say, okay, the value proposition of blockchain should be evident in the product at the face of the product, right? That track and trace, a digital, auditable, history should be evident. But at the same time, the thing that is complexity behind the product has to be hidden, such that people shouldn't worry much about what is happening and what they are actually setting up. So that's the main innovation that has driven for the last 2 years that markets and where it is today, right? So which is able to sell to certain enterprises and get the adoption. That's the main thing that we've been trying to solve day to day. Yeah, Praful, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of speak about something completely orthogonal to what Deep said, right? I mean, Deep talked about more the technology side. I'll tell you, last 2 years, since we have 2 or 3 years when we started this journey, I kind of see the two challenges that we have faced in terms of tech and team, right? In terms of tech, turn back the clock 2017, right? Just deciding which platform we will build on was a risky decision, right? If you go back, there was Quorum, there was Hyperledger Fabric, IOTA was coming out, EOS was there. I don't even remember all the kinds of blockchains that have been spun up and spun down since 2016, 17 when we started. And fortunately for us, the decisions that we have made have been correct in retrospect. And I think that speaks to the intelligence and thinking through of the team, that we kind of made the right decisions to kind of have a hybrid architecture where we knew that permission blockchains would be important, but we also knew that the connectivity with public blockchains would be equally important. And that's how we built our solution with a bridge connecting a permission and public blockchain. And Deep keep saying, hiding all this complexity from the enterprises. They just care about the business value. Right? The second problem has been the team, in the sense of hiring a team. Right? Now, this technology, we started working on this in 2017. And if you started looking at blockchain developers, there was nothing called blockchain developers. Nobody knew what blockchain developers were. So we had to find folks who were just very sharp, grow the team slowly, build the capability in-house. And that took time, right? That took time. And even right now, I can tell you we are hiring right now. We posted on LinkedIn about 3 weeks back. We have about close to 100 resumes with us right now. And Deep and Jay, who are our key architects, have rejected 85 of them without even introducing. So finding talent is a huge problem, right? I mean, just filling that 1 or 2 position, we have to kind of do a lot of work to find the right set of people who can either contribute on day one, which is still hard, or at least we can find capable people who can be groomed to contribute. There's a fundamental shift in how you program, right? Because you need to be worried about gas prices, about how efficient the code is. You need to worry about security. You need to worry about scalability. You need people who can work context switch, that I'm now working on a centralized system. I'm now working on the permission blockchain. I'm now working on the public blockchain. And each of them is a mental context switch when you build a product at the level of complexity that we have built. Right? And that is another challenge. So the tech, making the right tech choices and finding the right team members, for me, are perhaps the 2 highlights of the last 2-3 years.
I think with any new technology, sourcing talent is always going to be a big pain point for everyone who's building in the ecosystem. So I think that's like a natural and inherent part of being at the forefront of something new. I guess to sort of round up this conversation, and we'll leave it on something a bit more positive than the challenges you're facing, and just ask where KoineArth is going next. Like what else have you got in the development pipeline that you'd like to share with us today?
Sure. So let me share my thoughts, and then or maybe I'll let Deep go first. I'll let Deep go first, and then I'll wrap it up. Deep, first, why don't you take a crack at it?
Yeah, we both could answer the same thing. This is something that we all work day and night. So one thing is something coming up is of course the mobile version of markets, and we are very much waiting for, right? It's about reaching more people, right? I mean, at this instance, at least in India, the trend is being teaching technology to small players, SMEs started to use these kind of technologies, get the access to better finance today is one of the key things that been talked a lot these days. And so we work with a lot of SMEs where enterprises actually work with a lot of SMEs. So when we have to build a group, that group will consist of a lot of SMEs. They are not tech savvy people. So something that a mobile version that could give accessible for such kind of people is something in pipeline. We are not too far away, hardly a month or two we should have a mobile version up and running, and that's one thing is big for us. And we keep coming with such kind of new use cases, either by talking to new customers or which we have thought in the past that still the industry is not ready to kind of adopt. They will get excited when we kind of share this kind of new solutions, but whether they're ready to start using them, I'm not pretty sure. So we have kind of certain use cases that we have. Product passport is something that is growing a lot. The kind of variety of types of product passports you can enable, right? Different kind of passports and certificates that you can enable are many, and each have its own viewpoint, its own version of it. So that's one feature that gonna come to the front phase of the markets in next 2 months. This is one of the key independent use case in respect of your supply chain, your operation efficiency. Even though you don't want to get into that yet, but you still wanted to issue some trustable product passport as a certificate for end consumer to verify how reliable this product is and what is the product provenance of this is a standard independent use case that many people actually will show interest towards the future. So those are the main two things that are in pipeline, at least in the near future. Long term, I think Praful can take that hit. What is there?
Yeah, so in the long term or in the medium term, there are three things that I'm really excited about. The first is take the enterprise NFT platform and the way we have mapped it up in a product passport offering for environmental and sustainability compliance of products. Right? I think that's something that we believe will really make a huge impact on the world by both enabling and nudging enterprises to offer environmentally conscious and sustainability conscious products in the market and differentiate those products from other products. Right? Customers are now willing to pay more for ESG friendly products. What we offer as enterprises a way for their products to stand up. So I think that's the ESG compliance part is, I think, something really exciting using the enterprise NFTs and product passports. The second thing that is interesting for me is the ability of our platform to act as a bridge between centralized finance like banks and decentralized finance. I think that's another interesting area that we are looking at. And finally, very consciously realizing that even if companies are using blockchain, they still need to be regulatory compliant and making sure that we integrate with the national regulatory compliance needed in the country to offer our customers a seamless experience. So those are the three things that I'm excited about in the medium term.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds all very exciting. Well, before we go ahead and wrap up here, Praful and Deep, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, I would only say that we are still at the beginning of this journey. As Deep mentioned, blockchain is, we believe, going to be transformational and a foundational change in economics, as well as how business is done in the real world. And we are looking forward to be a part of this journey. Deep, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. So for me, the exciting part is from the beginning. This NFT or the product that we worked, it's not new. To be frank, this is in limelight now, but this is a solution that we built almost 1.5 to 2 years ago. This NFT and connection to public blockchain. So that now it's in limelight. So I wanted to see how fast it grows, how fast it enables, makes impact in the industry. That's something that I would like to wait and watch sooner. I mean, I'm hoping it happens sooner. So that's what my closing thoughts are. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I mean, thank you both so much for joining us today. And a big thank you to Will as well for having me on as a co-host. It was really, really interesting to hear your story, and, wish you every success.
Thank you. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you for having us, arranging this.
Yeah, same here.